Welcome to Digitizing Delmarva Heritage and Traditions, the Maryland Beaten Biscuit. This biscuit is extraordinarily important to my family, and I think a lot of families in Maryland, certainly on the Eastern Shore. It is a very dense biscuit. We always ate it at the holidays. There were maybe a couple of other times during the year that we would make them, but certainly beating biscuits was very much a part of our daily life in the month of December, and we would have them often for Thanksgiving too. And we'll talk a little bit about the history as we go through this, but this really is kind of an English tradition. It's a biscuit that doesn't need a lot of fancy ingredients. It doesn't spoil quickly, and it tastes terrific. So welcome to this wonderful time. We're going to be making these biscuits and hopefully preserving this wonderful tradition. And joining me today is my sister, my big sister, only in age, not in size, Ellen Hitch. And Ellen is the family bearer of the Maryland Beaten Biscuit recipe. She has all the equipment that she inherited from our mother, who made the best Maryland Beaten biscuits you will ever eat. And Ellen inherited that talent. I did not. I can make the biscuits. I can beat the biscuits. I can't do the final step, which you'll see as we go through this whole process. So, Ellen, tell us about Mother's and yours Maryland Beaten biscuits.
We're going to begin.
Okay, go.
Okay. The original recipe, when I received it, called for a quart of flour. And measuring out a quart of flour, I concluded that it is 4.5 cups. So we start with 4.5 cups of all-purpose flour.
Right. Do you want me to sift that? Or are you going to sift that in there?
I'll sift it in there,
Yeah.
but you'll have to sift a little bit of it in there, if you will. Just put
Sure.
the sifter right in the bowl. My sifter doesn't hold quite 4.5 cups.
You'll
so.
see as we go through this that my specialty is talking about the biscuits as opposed to making the biscuits.
Well, anybody can sift.
Well,
Okay.
yeah, even me.
All right, hold up.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 4.
And this is a process that you generally do a few times a year.
Right.
You don't make these every weekend.
Oh, heavens, no. All right, now, just hold up a minute because I want to add some other stuff in there.
This is a story of our life where I'm always jumping the gun.
Yeah,
telling me to hold up.
Okay, we're going to use a scant tablespoon of salt.
Now, Mother used to just measure that out
She
in
did
her hand.
in her hand, and when I say scant, it should look
Just
more
like that. Yeah.
not to the edge.
Not rounded, not even up to the edge. And we keep sifting?
No.
Gotcha.
Okay, and then we're going to add a full tablespoon of sugar.
What did Mother call? Mother also measured that in her hand. She would kind of
yeah.
draw in your hand.
Right.
You need this much. And
We're going to add a pinch of cream of tartar. A pinch is what?
1/8 of a teaspoon?
Probably.
That's, yeah.
You stick your fingers in, what comes out
Is a pinch.
Is a pinch.
So if you've got big hands, you may want to compensate for that.
Right. And the recipe called for 2 fingers of baking powder. 2 fingers of baking powder is what comes out on 2 fingers.
And that we're going to have all this so that at the end you can see the recipe, and as you have tried to quantify it for modern
for
yeah
spoons.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can finish sifting
Okay.
it.
Ellen, why do you sift the flour?
First of all, you want to get all the lumps out,
Right.
but we wanted all of the sugar and the salt and the baking powder and the cream of tartar to be incorporated in
Right.
all of that. And the sifting does
Right.
that; it sifts it around.
Incorporated, that's a great food TV word. They talk about incorporating things.
Okay, here I have a half a pound of lard, and as far as I'm concerned, lard is the shortening that must be used to make good biscuits.
Mother tried others, but
I've tried others as well. I've tried Crisco. We all try to be a little more health conscious now, but the lard makes the biscuit.
yeah, the lard is the key. There are a couple of different, obviously the ingredients, but the lard is the key ingredient.
Exactly.
And then of course the beating is essential,
Right.
and then the making of the biscuits,
Right.
and then not letting them burn. So it's really a 4-step
Oh,
process.
yeah. Now, years ago, they didn't have food processors. They didn't have all these fancy gadgets.
No
that you
dough
have.
hooks.
Oh, no, no.
These were the dough hooks.
These were the dough hooks.
Gotcha.
So this is the only way that you can mix that lard with
Mm-hmm.
the flours with your hand. So that's...
You can use other things, but you're not going to get Mother's and Yours beaten biscuits,
Well,
which is worth the effort.
You don't... I've tried the pastry...
Blenders, those little
Yeah,
flat
the little,
pastry, yeah,
you know,
yeah.
but it'll make it too coarse.
Okay.
You don't get the same
Texture.
mixture
Yeah.
of the lard to the flour.
And of course, that really is essential. You'll see in the finished product that it's really essential, the consistency of these biscuits. This is not your fluffy biscuit that you get at Hardee's. This is a biscuit that is dense, and it you have to do it this way, or it's just not going to be a Maryland biscuit.
All I'm doing is crumbling, mixing
Kind of
the
between
lard,
your fingers.
right? Just kind of rubbing it to get it all. What you want it to look like when we're done is like a course meal, and we'll be there soon, and then we can go to the cup of water that's sitting here. There weren't many ingredients. There were basic ingredients that every household had, so that they didn't have to make a special shopping trip to make Maryland biscuits.
No.
Just a coarse type of course meal, just so that you don't have any great big chunks of lard. You just want it all kind of mixed together.
And really, in many ways, if you all make pie crusts, this is kind of a similar to that step where you use your fingers and kind of just do it and get it to like it is like a coarser cornmeal kind of thing.
Now this is pretty much what you want it to look like. Just
there's still a few lumps in there that you need that you could show them.
Yeah, well, in the beating process, that will be finished off. It'll be, pushed into the
Any hope
the
those
dough.
lumps had is gone once they're beaten.
Oh, no hope. All right, now we're going to add...
You're making a well there.
I'm just making a little well in the dough, or in the flour down here. And I'm going to add, it calls for a cup of cold water. And I'll start by adding almost a cup. I won't add the whole cup, because as I go, I want to be able to judge the texture of it. I don't want it to get it real soupy, because then I have to add more flour, and all that throws off all the other
ingredients. Well, you end up
ingredients.
like Uncle Ted and Aunt Betty's gravy, the time they kept adding flour and water and ended up with a pan of flour water.
Exactly.
One of their first Thanksgivings. Great family story. And I think that's really important, that you add and then work, because that you have the option. You can always put more in. You can't take it out.
Exactly.
And you're rotating the bowl there.
All I'm doing is just squeezing it to try and incorporate all that flour, and I just give it a turn every now and then to do that. Now I've decided that I want a little bit more water.
You're lifting up the part that has,
I've got, so that I can get some more water in there. And I don't add a lot at any one time. You just have to, it's experience, I guess. You just practice. You just have to, the more batches you make, the more you learn.
Well, and of course that was the key to great cooks like you and Mother. The fact that it's something you can't necessarily describe, but you'll know it when you get it.
Get it, exactly.
Yeah.
You know it by the feel.
Yeah, and a lot of what you're using here is just basic good pastry kind of making. Making the well. Working it through your fingers. You're looking for a stiff dough here.
As you can see, this isn't for somebody who's got arthritis in their hands.
Or doesn't like the feel of dough in their hands.
No. Or doesn't want to get their hand dirty.
It is. This kind of work, though, is stress reducing. I mean, you're thinking about what you're doing, not what happened, yesterday.
Right. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I've got a pretty big ball of dough here, but there's still a little bit left in the bowl. And I don't want to add a whole lot of water. So what I'll probably do is just pour a little bit of water in my hand, just a few drops,
Yeah.
and work it in that way. As I say, I don't want to, it's better to have it too dry to start out with than to have it too wet.
Yeah, because that beating process makes it so very smooth.
Right.
One of the accounts that I read in a 19th century cookbook said that, you know, the mark of a good dough, it'd be smoother than any other dough you'd ever seen. But it never starts out that way.
No, no.
Sometimes when Mother used to make, she'd say, oh, when we'd start beating it, she'd say, oh, I'm so worried it's too dry. And it always came out perfectly.
Perfect, yeah. Yeah. Now you can pretty much tell when it's done because, as you can see, you've cleaned the bowl. There's no
right, but you're going to have a
everything is
very
stuck here.
different. You've got a very now. Tell me how you know that the dough is ready to be beaten.
Okay.
Here, do you want a cutting board on that so you can?
I can just lay it right out here
Yeah.
on the counter.
The mixing bowl looks good with the countertop, Ellen.
Another antique. Okay.
Excuse me. Let me get that out of your way.
I'll even let you feel it.
Oh, okay.
There, you can stick your finger on there.
Okay.
How hard is it?
It is very hard. You can see it's a very dense. There's no fluffiness here.
No.
You're not going to get a fluffy biscuit.
Right. Clean finger, and I just press it in. If it comes out clean, it's done.
It's ready to.
It's the right
Okay.
consistency.
So this is step 1.
Right.
Step 2 is beating. Step 3 is making. Step 4 is
baking.
not burning.
Not burning.
the bottom. So
Step 5 is eating.
that's right. That's the fun step.
Now it's ready to go to the beater.
We're doing the beating process right now. Scotty, my brother-in-law Scott Hitch, has been beating these biscuits for about 20 minutes at this point. So why don't you beat and show us how you would beat them out one time, and then we'll bring them together to make them.
Okay, and again, this is how it will come out of the bowl after it's been completely mixed.
Okay.
So first of all, I'll use the flat part of the hammer to try to beat them out.
And I'll tell everybody here that he's using the hammer that my mother used, that our mother used, and the board has lots of great kind of divots in it. How many batches do you think you've beaten on this board, Scotty?
Far too many.
And you beat, the rule of thumb was 20 minutes for family, 30 minutes for company, but how long do you generally beat a batch?
About 25 minutes.
Yeah. And you're beating this to get, the biscuits are dense, so you're beating them to make sure that the air is out.
You remove as much air as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
So now we're starting to get these flat, and what I'll do is I'll flip it over and start to use the end of the hammer now.
And you're kind of, that's an important thing. Mother always taught us to beat out. You're kind of beating the dough to expand it.
And
not coming down just
and
flat.
also to make it flatter.
Right,
You're just kind of pulling away from the center.
exactly. I think that's an important, Mother always said that was an important thing. So it's important at this point that this is the tail end of the beating process. He's been beating these for about 23, 24 minutes.
That's
so
correct.
We're coming into the time when the dough is just about ready.
Now flip it one more time.
Again, beating out from the edges. This is a great stress reducer, isn't it? I mean, you could come home and beat a batch of biscuits, or you can pretend it's somebody you had trouble with that day.
I don't want to talk about that. Giving no names.
Okay, well, I could probably think of a few.
Now I think we beat about 25 minutes now.
Okay,
So I think the beating process is complete.
okay.
And what I'll do now is I'll roll this up
Uh-huh.
and stretch it.
And it's very smooth and it's very elastic, isn't it?
Yes, you can tell when it gets almost done or done because it becomes smooth on the outside.
Uh-huh. And you have a sense that all that air is gone.
Yes, not all, but enough.
Yeah.
So with that process complete, I'm through beating, and then I turn it over to my wife, who starts to make them into biscuits.
Okay. Now, Scotty, this is not a hammer that you're going to use in any chores around the house. There's no honeydews. The biscuits are the only honeydew that you use that hammer for.
That's correct. You use it for no other purpose but beating the biscuits once or twice a year.
Now I'm bringing the dough that Scotty has just finished beating over to my sister Ellen, who's going to make these biscuits. And I'm going to tell you that the making part is the tricky part. I can do the mixing of the dough, I can do the beating, but the making is what really makes the biscuits. Good beating is essential, getting it ready. Now, Ellen, what are you looking for in this this dough at this point?
Actually, I'm just kind of squeezing it and making it so that it's pretty uniform and
In
size.
size.
We don't have a big hunk here, or anything.
Now, how do you know that you've got a good that it has been beaten enough, that you've got a good product going here?
It's soft.
It's soft.
It's
Very smooth.
Yeah, very smooth and very soft.
Yeah.
When you start out, the dough's going to be very, very stiff and dry. Now it's soft and it's very pliable and moist.
And that's from the beating.
The beating has done that. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to start breaking these off so that we can form the biscuits.
And we usually get about 2.5 dozen.
If there hasn't been a lot of dough eating before, this family is a dough eater.
Okay. So it's usually a couple dozen.
You should get 2 dozen. Sometimes we get 2.5 dozen. But basically what I do is I take the palm of my hand, put it there, and where it closes that's my rule for my biscuit. So.
And this is a really important part, as I said, and it's not as easy as it looks because I've never mastered it, which is why Ellen inherited the hammer, the board, and the little marker that we use. We call it the pricker, which you'll see in a little while. Because my kids tell Ellen that she's the only person who can make them as good as Nanny, and Nanny was our mom. So,
well, it just takes practice, and it's because it is a time-consuming process. And I think everything today is so rushed and hurried. It's something that a lot of people just don't have time or take the time to do anymore.
And this isn't something you do every weekend.
Oh, heavens no.
You do these...
as he said, maybe twice a year.
Yeah. Now, how many batches did you make this past Christmas?
Oh, 8, I believe.
And when you make them at Christmas, you kind of get a little system going here where you're making the dough and Scotty's beating, then you're cooking, and so
it's usually a day process. We start out in the morning and hopefully we finish by like 3 o'clock. So it's just one continuous thing after the other.
Okay, now this is the tricky part, everybody. So watch this because this will be the cutting edge with a good biscuit. Watch it. Okay.
Now that I've got them all broken out, now I'm going to knead them because you want them to be smooth and round to form a biscuit. So I start with a little piece and I just push and turn, just give it a quarter turn like that. Now, as you can see, it certainly isn't round right now, but then I just pick it up and kind of squeeze it, pull it all together.
Pinch it like up there.
Pinch it to a little point, pat the little point down, lay it there, and there's biscuit 1.
Now that took probably about 30 seconds, and it's an art form. There's no way that I can do that. I've never quite mastered that.
It's just a matter of kneading it and turning it and rolling it. And as I say, when you pick it up, you can see that it's nice and smooth and round on top. And it certainly isn't smooth and round on the bottom, but then just by pulling it together like that and then patting it down, you can...
Well, and you talk about, I think that's a really important point, the fact that in this world, everything is quick. You pull something out of the refrigerator, heat it up, and then you're done. And this is an art, but I have so many great memories, and my kids do too, of going down to Mother's and beating the biscuits and having them cooked, and then, of course, the fun part was eating them.
Eating them, that's the best part.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
In his retirement, Daddy would always come up from his little office downstairs and say, "Are they ready yet?" And you know, when you make these, the great thing about Maryland biscuits is it's impossible to have a bad Maryland biscuit.
Never had one.
No,
Never.
no. Mother used to say, "Oh, I don't like the looks of the bottom. Maybe she thought they were too done or something." But Daddy would always say, "Nope, nope, Maribel, there's no such thing as a bad Maryland biscuit. Some are better than others, but there's no such thing as a bad Maryland biscuit." So.
I've eaten some that have been burnt on the bottom.
I'll
before.
tell you.
They even taste
They
good.
do, especially if you put a little bit of country ham and a
Oh,
slab
yeah.
of cheddar cheese, which Daddy used to call rat cheese.
Cheese.
Yes, which is how my son likes to eat them.
With cheese.
Yes.
I like country ham.
Yeah, well, he throws a slab or two of that in there, too.
Or just butter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and it's funny when you talk to people who know Maryland biscuits, everybody has their own favorite thing that they like to eat with them.
Yeah.
So there's a rhythm here. Ellen's got a rhythm going that I think is essential to making them look as good as they do. And also the trick is through the beating that Scotty did and through this kneading process and this making process, Ellen is going to get a Maryland biscuits that's dense. It's not your fluffy biscuit.
No, it's not going to be a light. It's not going to be airy. It's going to be very, very dense. And the first couple of days, they will be soft, still inside. But the longer they stay, they will get drier inside. I've never had them stay so long that they were powdery.
You've never had to throw any out? No. And in fact, when our son and his wife arrived on Christmas Day, he leaned over to me and said, "Do we have reason to anticipate there are going to be biscuits arriving shortly?" And I said, "Ellen's coming at 3.
Yeah.
Now, the biscuits will be here, I think." Interestingly enough, I did a little research. Maryland beaten biscuits are something we really take for granted in our corner of the world and certainly in our family. But this beaten biscuit, this dense biscuit, really dates back to the 16th century English, and it was something that had very basic ingredients, didn't go bad quickly, and so it was something that the navies used because they could put it on board, and they'd of course be out for months at a time during the height of the Elizabethan and the British Empire. So they had this kind of hardtack biscuits, and it found its way to this country and ended up going to Virginia and then the Appalachian regions in Kentucky and then finally to Maryland, where it became our Maryland beaten biscuits. Yeah. And they say that the really good ones are ones that are dry on the outside and smooth and soft inside. So not gooey, but just, and that's, I think, was the hallmark of our mother's beaten biscuits, is that they had that density, they had that texture, but they were never like so dry you thought.
They weren't powdery.
I need a glass of water to get this baby down.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Actually, it was funny, I came across something that had a recipe from 1853 in a cookbook, because they've certainly found these in most southern 18th century cookbooks would have had a recipe for beaten biscuits. In fact, my husband's grandmother grew up in Tennessee, and she had a biscuit that was not quite like this, but it was a denser biscuit, Tennessee beaten biscuits. And but an 1853 cookbook has a lot of the same ingredients that Mother used. Lard is essential.
Oh yeah. I've tried Crisco, I've tried other products, but lard.
And you know what's
pork fat.
Yes, well, absolutely. But you know what's funny about that now? Everything comes full circle. I was sharing one day with a young woman who I got to know as a trainer, and she was in a master's program in integrative medicine. So she was very much into healthy lifestyles and those kinds of things. And she actually said she thought that butter or lard was better than a lot of other shortenings because at least it wasn't hydrogenated. It was what it was.
Exactly. Just like everything else, eat it in moderation.
Yeah.
That piece is going to be a little big. I'll have to fix that one in a minute. And what you strive for here are biscuits that are pretty uniform in size. You don't want great big ones and you don't want little ones, because you want everything to bake equally. And if you come up with one that's too little or too big, then you just pinch off, add on, and rework it.
And you talk about the biscuit eating. I remember when Mother would make the biscuits up like this, and she would keep the little extra pinches on the corner. And it was always great sport with the kids to grab a pinch of it and eat.
Get the pinch. As I say, family of dough eaters.
And one of the great things about this, it's funny, we've had an opportunity to talk a little bit about Biscuit since we planned this little debut here on Pack 14's Food Nation. But Mother never used to beat the biscuits. I remember beating a lot of batches of biscuits, and certainly I remember Daddy beating a lot of batches of biscuits. You beat biscuits.
I would beat them occasionally, yes.
And we didn't, I didn't know this story until you and I started talking about it, but Ellen's dad was my mother's childhood sweetheart, and they were married in 1940, and she lost Ellen's dad in 1945 in the Pacific. And but they courted in Allen, growing up in Allen. He was able to kind of kill two birds with one stone. He endeared himself to our grandmother. Tell that story.
It was always on a Saturday, and he would go to see my mother, and at that time he would beat a batch of biscuits for my grandmother. And he was the beater. She made them just like I did, and then he would beat like Scotty did. But they got to kill two birds with one stone, because that way he could always have a little time with Mother, and grandmother would get her beaten biscuits.
And he endeared himself to grandmother.
Everybody was happy.
Yeah, because if you did work for grandmother, you really endeared yourself to her. She was into that.
That's how to get on her good side.
Yes, yes. And so we could say that our lives are very much connected to the Maryland biscuit.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you want to get the pan now?
I got 26 biscuits.
Okay.
So that wasn't too bad.
Scotty didn't eat too much dough before he got started.
I don't think he had any today.
Talk about the pan, Ellen, this great pan.
This is the biscuit pan.
This is the biscuit pan. We had the biscuit hammer. This is the biscuit pan.
And believe it or not, this is as much of an essential part of the Maryland biscuit to me as the hammer was, because this ensures proper baking for the biscuit. And it is a tin pan. It's not any other metal. It's tin.
No Super Duper Williams Sonoma cookware.
No.
Okay.
No. It has nice high sides, nice big flat bottom, and once it goes in the oven, it holds the heat around the biscuits.
And this was our grandmother's.
This is our grandmother's pan. So, like the hammer, if anything ever happens to the pan, we're done.
We're done. We're done.
We can't do the same thing on a cookie sheet.
We'll have to get a special tin guy. I'm going to get these.
The markers?
Yes, these are the markers, or as we call them in our family, the prickers. Talk about these before you mark the biscuits.
Everybody who made Maryland biscuits had their own mark for their finished biscuit, just as people who made butter had their own butter press, and every press was designed for their own family of their own kind.
Everybody put their touch on, or titch on, as grandmother would say.
When you would go to the store to buy your butter, you could tell who made it from the print, if you knew who the prints were. This marker that I have was my husband's grandmother's marker, and we have used that over the years. And this little marker was my grandmother and mother's marker. And when my mother had it, she had one of the points taken off to mark her biscuits that she made. So when it came time for me to make mine, I took off a point. So now this is
your biscuits.
My biscuit.
These are Ellen's biscuits.
Now I'm going to mark the biscuit.
It's very light too, isn't it, Ellen?
Just kind of push it down.
This is when the kids always started to get excited.
Okay.
That part is simple enough, I think. You know, we touched on a lot of the great subtle things that you need to do. But when you pricked them, I noticed that you didn't go. It wasn't a hard prick; it was a definite prick.
Right.
But you just kind of push it down a little bit.
Just enough pressure to. When I made them out, you remember they were kind of round and domed. I just sink it in enough to push that dome down a little bit. And the only purpose, well, I guess it's two purposes. Pricking it lets out a little bit of moisture. As you saw when we took them out of the oven, they had a moist sheen on them, and that's some of the moisture that had come out of the biscuit. And then, of course, it's just to put your mark of identification
As Grandmother
on there.
Messick would say, to put your titch on it.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
so,
right.
so it's for
My mark.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Everyone knows these are Ellen Hitch's biscuits. And it's really important, too, that everyone knows you don't wash this pan.
Never.
You wipe it down, but this is only for the biscuits.
Doesn't go in the water. You
Nope.
just take a damp cloth and wipe it out.
Yeah. Never throw a chicken in it on a Sunday.
Never.
Just biscuits.
This will hold 30 biscuits.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, I didn't have as many, so I'll tilt this a little bit. So I just kind of place them.
Because they don't, excuse me, they
won't-
don't expand.
no.
They're not like a fluffy
No.
biscuit or a leavened bread. They're not going to squeeze out like chocolate chip cookies.
No,
What
no.
you see is going to be what you get.
They'll get a little bit bigger, but not
Not a whole lot.
They're not going to expand and
Yeah.
touch each other or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Okay, and we
So-
put them in, what's the temperature, Ellen?
Temperature is going to vary oven to oven. My oven, I bake at 450, and I'll bake them for 25 to 30 minutes, and you need to watch them like the last 20 minutes or the last 5 minutes or so the bottoms don't burn, because that can happen. But even with the burnt bottom, it's not bad.
And you're putting them on the middle rack, right?
right in the
Right.
middle of the oven.
Okay, great.
I think this batch is just about done, and
Oh, they look great,
I
Ellen.
wanted to show you how they kind of have a glassy sheen,
Yeah, you can see that.
and they're not real brown. You don't want them real brown. They're just kind of creamy colored on top. And we're going to set those over here.
They're really smooth. It's hard to believe that was that kind of rough dough that we started with.
out with, yes.
Yeah, and the whole process takes about an hour and a half from
From the time that you
start-
mix the dough, the beating,
to
the
where we
baking,
are right now.
the baking.
Yeah. And as you said, we need to let them cool. You let them cool right in the pan.
I let them cool right in the pan,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully, as you said, they'll still be here
Right,
cooling.
right. And that never happened when
No.
we talked about how Daddy used to come upstairs and when he would smell them in the kitchen, and Mother would say, "Now don't touch those biscuits, Casey," and he just, at that point it was too late. The horse was out of the barn or the biscuit was in the mouth. So, okay, now, Ellen, we've talked about what we've done here. You've got some biscuits that you've made previously. Why don't you, here, let's switch positions, and you kind of come around there if you don't mind, and cut, because I think it's really important that everybody see, oh golly, I wish we did have smell-o-vision. These things smell tremendous. Cut the biscuit and show that very distinctive Maryland beaten biscuit texture. Yeah, that's a perfect biscuit. And you see
Right.
that's
There
just
you go.
tremendous. The beating and the making.
Not burn on the bottom?
Yeah, that's great. Not burn on the bottom, but they're still very good, even if you do burn them. Do not ever
No.
discard a batch of biscuits.
No.
But again, the beating and of course that kneading that you did when you made the biscuits gives that great dense uniform texture.
Oh, yeah. We have several different ways, favorite ways of eating them. Nice big chunk of butter, not margarine.
No.
Paula
Paula
Dean thing here.
Yes,
we gotta have some.
and you put a whole stick of butter in there. She would say, "I can't hardly wait to taste these biscuits."
But our favorite way is with Smithfield country ham.
That's Christmas, Ellen.
What's your favorite way?
Well, there are no bad ways. I think the ham, and I would probably slap a piece of cheddar cheese
Cheese.
on there, yellow cheddar,
Yellow cheddar?
yellow cheddar.
Well, I can do
yeah,
that too.
They're great. They're great. They're great. Now, How does Scotty like to eat his biscuits?
I think he likes both.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this is kind of a morning thing if you want
Right,
a little pick-me-up
right.
in the day. And lunch, cocktails.
Right.
Yeah, and if you're Andrew Tilghman, my son, 11 o'clock at night, midnight, 1
Snack.
o'clock. Yeah, yeah. When he's at home at Christmas, we always come down to a little plate with some Maryland biscuit crumbs and a little bit of ham.
So you know he's been into them.
And cheese that's not properly been wrapped up back in the refrigerator. So, this has been great, Ellen. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your taking part of your Saturday morning to make these biscuits, because a lot of people are going to enjoy them more than they would other biscuits, because mothers are the best. And you are the only...
We might be prejudiced, but I think
No,
so, too.
no. We're right, Ellen. And I think, too, as my kids said, they're right. You're as good a cooker as Nanny, my mom.
Yeah.
So these biscuits are great. Everybody needs to get their own tradition. You know, we have our hammer, and we have grandmother's tin pan. I'm not going to. Now, tell me, Ellen has a grown daughter and almost a grown grandson. Does Kim beat biscuits? Are you going to be able to pass that on to her?
I've tried numerous times to get her interested in doing this, and so far I haven't succeeded.
Yeah, well, maybe, does she eat the biscuits?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, she's
no shortage of eaters.
yes. Well,
Just a shortage of makers.
Yeah, well, and my kids are very much looking forward to a copy of this so that they can begin the tradition. So maybe we'll have to get them started. We'll have to go to an auction and get a tin pan.